Attention parents and coaches. Do you wish you had a safe social media platform for your youth athletes? Fortunately for you, there's a revolutionary new app that helps with just that. Introducing Small Player, Big Play. Small Player, Big Play app provides young athletes, parents, and coaches a user-friendly sports social media platform. The app allows users to connect with friends, make new friends, create groups, text, chat, and post pictures and videos of you and your teammates participating in your favorite sport or activity. To begin, users can simply download and sign up for the app using an email account. Younger users have the ability to sign up using their smartphone and a parent's email address. From there, users can begin to interact and engage with other users of the app. Small Player Big Play app also gives users the ability to live stream full games and events. You can live stream your event so that friends, family, or anyone in the world can see you in action. Users can also share posts from the app to their other social media accounts like Facebook and Twitter. What are you waiting for? Get in the game and share your love of sports with the world. Download the Small Player Big Play app today.
Are you ready to listen to my dad Joe and Uncle Justin talk about sports? Now on with the show.
The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop, which has been serving the greater West Lawn area delicious food for over 70 years. You are listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
Boring.
A weekly podcast about sports since 2011.
Don't you ever get tired of being wrong all the time?
With a focus on football.
Kansas City 31, San Francisco 20. Mahomes takes the snap. He is just going to throw it long for Demarcus Robinson. It is going to use up all the time. The game is over, and the Chiefs' kingdom has firmly planted its flag on top of football's highest summit. The Kansas City Chiefs are champions of Super Bowl 54.
Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and here with me, not in studio this week, but remotely, is my co-host, Justin Raffoff. Justin, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's it was a good holiday. Certainly different this year, but it was good. But yeah, plenty to talk about as the NFL season is unfortunately coming to a close. Well, regular season is winding down.
Yeah, this afternoon I was watching NFL Red Zone, and I switched over to it right as the countdown clock got to 5 seconds, and Kelly turned to me and goes, "Is that your favorite screen of the week? Is like your favorite thing to see?" And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, nothing beats it on that week one, seeing the NFL Red Zone countdown.
Oh yeah,
Get close to kickoff, and Scott Hansen jumps on your screen, and you're ready to kick off the NFL season." But it's definitely bittersweet today, knowing that Week 16, now that we're talking here, is basically in the books, just 2 games to go. Man, outside of football season is really a sad time for me and my sports interests. As much as I love hockey and baseball and getting into March Madness, nothing compares to that, end of August through early January time of the year with high school, college, pro football going on. So yeah, it is definitely bittersweet right now, but there's a lot to talk about this week after the NFL Week 16 action.
yeah, definitely. Like it is strange. Like just I don't know. It's just been it's been a crazy fall and into the beginning of winter here, and so in some ways it seems like it's been a long time. In other ways, it's like, how can it be the Sunday after Christmas already? Like how did that happen?
Yeah, I really it's really something to think that we're here. I know a lot of people are very happy to be here at the end of 2020, and this is our final show of 2020. So a few things I wanted to point out before we move on and discuss what we're going to discuss. I found it pretty coincidental but comical that we are here doing episode 321, and it's our pre-New Year show, and the countdown image that I found was 3, 2, 1, Happy New Year. So I couldn't have planned that better if I tried. So that it took almost a decade, but numerical episode.
Wait, you mean you did not have this mapped out from 10 years ago?
No, anything I tried to map out is always thrown away pretty quickly. So this one works out in my favor, so I really appreciated it when I noticed it this afternoon getting set up. I thought it was pretty funny. Also, I did mention my fantasy game last week a bunch, and I just want to update it only because of the way that I lost was incredibly heartbreaking. Not so much by what I didn't do, although you can throw that in my direction, because at the last second I replaced Brandon Ayuk with James Robinson, and that 6-point differential was one of the reasons I lost, because I lost by 2. But if you remember, I had to play against Ben Roethlisberger and Deontay Johnson last week. They played on the Monday night game, or was it the Sunday night game? When did Pittsburgh play last week? Pittsburgh-Cincy.
It was the Monday night.
Cleveland,
night. New York was the Sunday night.
Okay, so we had this show on Sunday with Paul. Then Monday night, I was clinging to a lead, but I knew I had to go up against Deontay Johnson and Ben Roethlisberger. Well, in the second half of that game, those players had combined for 0 points because Big Ben had -2 and Deontay Johnson had 2. So I was clinging to my lead, and then right before I went to bed, they had connected for a score, and I was only up by 2. And when I woke up the next morning, I had lost by 2. So I didn't hold out much hope of winning that game going into it. But when I went to bed or was about to go to bed and I was still up with, a quarter and a half to play, I was feeling pretty good. But then, of course, the one touchdown pass had to go to Deontay Johnson. And that just ruined my chances as they got enough points for my dad to beat me. And him and my uncle, though, are in quite a slugfest right now. My dad has Aaron Jones left tonight, and my uncle has he has a couple guys left to go. Trying to think who he has, but it's a tough matchup. It's a good game, but yeah, it's just fantasy football, man, can be crazy. And I texted you last Tuesday morning of like the 5 different ways if one thing had changed, I would have won. Jason Sanders missed a field goal. He makes it. I win. Justin Jefferson had a no catch that was overturned to be a catch for him. If that stays a no catch, I win. Right. It's just crazy.
That was an inconsequential play.
Right, because the Vikings didn't end up win. That was the second to last play of the game. So, yeah, it's just tough. But my dad has Aaron Jones right now, and my uncle has Devontae Adams, who already has a touchdown going. And he also has Stephon Diggs tomorrow night. Now, my dad is also up by 18.5 points as we talk now. But it's an evenly matched game, and they're both possibly going to score in the 140s. So I definitely think that those two teams throughout the year were the best, so it's no surprise that they're meeting in the championship. But it is a 2-week championship, so we'll see what happens with the two of them this weekend, next week. So the only other thing I wanted to mention before we talk about the games is I don't know how many people out there are members of FanDuel, but they offer these boosts. Justin, I don't know if you've gotten in on this recently, but you need to based on what they're offering today, because you can get basically free money on FanDuel if you go and choose the Buffalo Bills as the victors tomorrow night, because they are currently plus 77 on FanDuel because they offer these super boosts where for every 2,000 people that join the bet that the Bills will win, they bump up everything by a point. Well, so many people are in on the Bills beating the Patriots tomorrow night that the Bills are now plus 77. So obviously they're going to win, and you're essentially getting free $45. If you bet 50, you'll win 45. So, and you can get a free $50 just for signing up. If you get a referral link, you get free $50. So they're essentially giving you free money. Yeah, I just thought it was crazy because I've done some of these super bets, super boosts in the past, and they're still like it's probably a win, but you could still lose. But no, this one is a
Right.
slam dunk. You are
Right. Like I know
absolutely
there was one this week of like Joel Embiid getting 8 points in their opener. And like, okay, like he's probably going to get at least 8 points, but like he could not, if he got injured or something, like, but there's no way the Bills lose by 78 or more by the time it gets to tomorrow.
right. So yeah, I just found that really really funny. But let's see, where should we start? So let's start with the Christmas evening game. We had football on Christmas, and it was a game that was important for one team, not so important for the other. 49ers Cardinals. Doesn't matter who the home team was because it was going to be played in Arizona no matter what.
The Christmas game was the
Oh,
Saints
no, you're
game.
right. You're right. I'm thinking about yesterday. The Christmas game was Saints Vikings, and we had a historical outcome via your pal Alvin Kamara. Six touchdowns.
Thanks
six
for that
rushing
all
touchdowns.
season, buddy.
Yeah. 6 rushing touchdowns, and the Saints won. Drew Brees didn't look great, but he didn't need to. The Vikings' postseason hopes were dashed. The Saints get the victory, and they're trying to stay toe for toe, beat for beat with the Packers and the Seahawks, and I believe they clinched the division. So Saints are your your NFC South champs, much to my chagrin, as I continue to pick against them and they continue to prove me wrong year after year.
So, like, one of the crazy things, and I sent you this stat. They said it on TV after the game, but when this, like, Kamara rushed for 6 touchdowns, and that ties, record from 1929, where it was obviously completely different then. But the guy who did it in 1929, and I don't remember his name, but he also had given up 2 career home runs to Babe Ruth because he was also a professional pitcher in baseball.
That was an exclamation point for me when I read that.
Right. Like, that's just insane. The guy you share the record with also gave up home runs to Babe Ruth. Like, right. That's nuts.
So I was thinking that was the only thing that I had to talk about before we dove into that, but we are actually live on a new platform tonight. So we are live on Twitch. And why are we live on Twitch? It's because I'm doing housekeeping, getting ready for something that Justin and I will be debuting in a few months.
Yeah.
I already told my dad, who is massively disappointed because I don't think he has any interest in following along with what we're about to embark on. But I said, don't worry, it's the off season. When football comes back, we'll do our previews, but we're going to switch it up a little. And come either end of February, but probably into March, Justin and I are going to we're going to play the NCAA college football game from, it's called NCAA Football 14, but it's actually from the summer of 2013, because that's the last time the game was allowed to be made, or that they made it without, lawyers being involved. They just kind of cast it aside and said, let's wait until the name, image, likeness stuff gets resolved, which hopefully will happen in the next few years, and we'll get our college football game back. During the time since then, though, people have really gravitated towards the game because it's really fun to play. College football game was always better than Madden, and it continues to be. And during the pandemic, people started streaming it, including the big one was through Barstool Sports, where Big Cat was playing and just jumping around school to school, and he actually got the actual college institutions behind him, and they would send out graphics for him, and they would send him swag. So it was just fun to watch during the spring and summer last year. And Justin and I love that game, and we haven't gotten to play video games together in a long time. So what
my gosh.
what Justin and I
a really long time
have discussed and are going to do, like I said, end of February, around our 10th anniversary or just thereafter, we're going to start a dynasty mode in NCAA Football 14. So I set up the Twitch account today to make sure that we were all streaming there and good. And Justin and I are going to take turns. One of us is going to play offense, one of us is going to play defense. We already decided that our coach's name will be J-Raff, and we will be starting at Florida Atlantic. And why Florida Atlantic? Well, because every time Justin and I talk about playing college football video game, both of us figured out that we both always choose to start at FAU, which is just a huge coincidence. So why would we start anywhere else than FAU when we embark on this journey together? So both of us were okay about, playing offense or defense. We didn't have a problem doing either. So instead of saying your offense, your defense, we are going to flip a coin before each and every game and decide who is the offensive guy and who's the defensive guy. We haven't decided on difficulty yet. It's probably not going to be Heisman because I don't think either of us are refined enough in playing that game to play.
We don't need to start out by just embarrassing ourselves and losing every game.
Right.
But,
yeah. I mean, maybe we'll get fired from FAU the first year and it won't really matter.
Exactly.
It'll be very short. We also have to tinker with the details of gameplay. I mean, we're not going to edit sliders or anything, but I'm talking more about how long the quarters are going to be and things like that. So we don't have all the details figured out, but that's something we're going to do. We've been doing this show for nearly 10 years. It may be time to switch it up for a little bit, capture a different audience, do something different outside of football season. So March, April, and May, at a minimum, that's probably what we'll be doing. Hopefully playing maybe 2 games a week. We'll see, again, how the timing works out. But I'm sorry for those of you watching, listening, that are expecting us to be on here talking sports. I mean, we can certainly do that while we play the game, and I have no problem doing that. But just to add a different video component, we might be talking sports while Justin and I play NCAA football 14. So just an FYI, and appreciate anyone that subscribes or tunes into us via Twitch, a new platform for us. I knew I'd forget something in my pre-football talk, so that's what it was. But anyways, let's get back to the games. Saints roll over the Vikings on Christmas, and then we get to the day after Christmas games. 3 of them were on the slate. And my Dolphins played at night against the Raiders. The early game, however, was a blowout, which was the Lions hosting the Bucks. And Tampa Bay absolutely housed them. Now, Detroit, I know, was down coaches because of COVID contact tracing, and they just had nothing. I believe the final was 47-7. Tampa Bay was all over them. I don't think Tom Brady played much, if at all, in the second half, but a lot of their other guys did, which was a little interesting to me. You pull Brady, and I get it. Why not? What's the point in risking his health and an injury to derail your potential spot in the playoffs, which they clinched for the first time since 2007. The Buccaneers will now be in the playoffs, which was the second longest drought to another team that we'll talk about a little bit later, who has not clinched a spot in the playoffs. Justin, what did you make of Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, all those guys still running down the field in the fourth quarter?
It was interesting to me because I really was a little surprised. Like you said, I know it's not the same as the college game where you have 90 some guys on the roster and things like that. I know, you're very limited in the NFL roster. However, for guys like Chris Godwin, who has had some injuries with his hands, that's a big deal for a receiver this year. And Mike Evans, who has had some, has been tweaked here and there. It surprised me that some of those guys were still in the game. I just, Gronkowski, I feel like what was the point, especially when the Saints had clinched the division the night before. So it's not like you're playing for the division, I was just a little surprised. I felt like they had more to lose than gain there. On the other hand, I know they've kind of taken their lumps at times and the offense hasn't been clicking at times, but like I said to you, I'm not saying that Tampa Bay is not clicking and that they're not a dangerous team come the playoff time. They very well may be, but rolling up a Detroit team that clearly is just punching the clock and ready to go home for the year, and had down, they didn't know who was going to coach because just a number of coaches were, out for COVID and stuff. And it was just one of those things where it's I don't know. Well, I don't know that I got anything from that game that's that particular game that makes me think, oh man, watch out from Tampa Bay, that I didn't think before. oh, when their offense is clicking, they're dangerous. I could have told you that before yesterday, and like if they would have gone against like a good team and done it, then it's more eye opening in my opinion than doing against one of the worst teams right now in football in Detroit, who was having issues with their coaching staff and is just looking to get done with the year, So like I don't feel like I learned anything about Tampa yesterday, and I was surprised that those guys who are so important to that team were still in the game when they didn't need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I was just surprised to see some of those guys. I know there's something about, was it Mike Evans getting close to a yardage record or something like that for Tampa Bay? Like, that's cool. Like, all right, if you really want to keep trotting him out there with a guy who's had not significant injuries, but has had injury, he's been dinged up, misses a game here and there throughout his, career. It just surprised me because they clearly have that game in the bag. But, whatever. It's just another thing to talk about, I guess. But
yeah,
I completely agree with you, what you said. I know some people, especially at the beginning of the year, were all about Tampa Bay, but they're.
Oh, I was too. I thought they were gonna. I thought they were gonna win the division.
We both picked them to win the division. I believe. I think so. I don't know. My uncle was always checking us on that.
And to be honest, like, here you go. Like, here's an interesting thing. The way they've played lately, like, I don't know that they're not better than the Saints right now, but the Saints trounced them twice, both times they played them. So it's hard to say that, but like, it's hard to beat a team 3 times, like all of that stuff. But Tampa's going to be going on the road, most likely, probably to, Washington, Dallas, or New York. Like,
right.
But they're going to be on the road in their first one. Imagine Tampa having to go to Washington. It's now, I know, like, the weather shouldn't be an issue for Brady, but like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting.
It absolutely will be interesting. I don't know. They don't really impress me. I have not been impressed by the Buccaneers. I think they're too inconsistent.
Right. I'm trying to think, like, their best win maybe is the win at Green Bay. But like,
that was in Tampa though. That was not at Green Bay. That was at home. Yeah, they beat up on the Packers pretty good, but that was I'm fairly confident that was in Tampa.
I haven't been that, like, it's not like I'm super impressed with Tampa or with Green Bay either. Like, I know their record's really good. They're the 1 seed, but like,
that was the same thing last year.
Right. I don't know that they're that great. Like, I don't know. They're looking good right now, but like, I don't know.
The game that I was thinking was on Christmas, but was actually the middle of the day yesterday, was 49ers Cardinals, which the Cardinals were playing for everything, still, good chance to make the playoffs, and they lay an egg against San Francisco, who's down to their third string quarterback.
Yes.
CJ Beathard was in over Nick Mullins, who was out, and obviously Garoppolo, and they only put up 12 points. I mean, this San Francisco defense hasn't been the one that took them to the Super Bowl last year. It was within, 8 minutes of winning the Super Bowl. The 49ers haven't been what they were a year ago, and the Cardinals just couldn't get it together. They couldn't do anything.
They were terrible. And it's one of those where, I'm not trying to make a statement as much about Lamar Jackson as I am about just like the way people overreact during the season. Remember when it became a thing like a month and a half ago, or probably like a month and a half ago, when people were like, oh, the Ravens would be so much better with Kyler Murray as their quarterback than Lamar Jackson. Like, they'd be like a Super Bowl, like a true Super Bowl contender, as opposed to what they are. And I'm like, and there was some pushback to that. Like, if you put Lamar Jackson in, the spread run and gun kind of offense, like with those weapons, it would be very different. And it's just interesting how, like, right now, like, the Ravens are playing much better and Lamar Jackson's playing much better than Kyler Murray is. Now, that's not to take away from Kyler Murray, and it's not to like crown Lamar Jackson as, oh, he's overcome all the obstacles that he's, had late in the season. But like, people overreact to so many things. Like, I feel like at this point, though, obviously we're through 16 weeks. We have a good idea. Like, teams have pretty much shown you who they are by this point, and Arizona, and that's why I said to you in text the other day, Arizona has underwhelmed me this year. I wouldn't say gross underachieving yet. I mean, if they lose this week and don't make the playoffs, which is a very real possibility because they're playing the Rams, who are playing for their playoff lives too. Like, okay, then I think you can tag that underachieving. If they make the playoffs in that division, I can't say that's underachieving, but they have been underwhelming because they've shown at times, man, what they've shown flashes of is brilliance. And then at other times, like, this team is, better than they were last year, but still a long way from competing in the NFC and in the NFC West even.
Yeah, it was just surprising to see the 49ers able to do what they were able to do against Arizona, just completely unexpected. And I think, like you said, has not met expectations, especially with the way things started, because they had rumbled out to a pretty decent record. Were they 5-3? Were they weren't 6-2, were they? I don't think so.
I don't think they were 6-2.
But they were strong enough, but I expected a little bit more from them because we were both down on San Francisco. We weren't sure what to make of the Rams. We still like Seattle, but Arizona was that team out there that we thought could make some leaps this year, and it looked like we were going to get it. But right now, they look like they don't have it in them this year. So we'll see what happens in year 3 next year. Now, the final game on Saturday was my Dolphins visiting Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. The Raiders are slumping again in the second half of the season. They needed a Hail Mary essentially to beat the Jets just a few weeks ago, and they lost their other games in November and December by and large, and everyone was thinking about last year where they got off to a hot start and then lost 7 of their last 8, something, or 2 or the 6 of their last 8, whatever it was. And
I think it was 7 because I think they finished 7-9 last year.
And they started 6-2, I think, didn't they? Weren't they 6-2, and then they finished 7-9? So shades of 2019 coming back. But for the most part, it looked like Las Vegas was going to beat the Dolphins last night. They were in control early. They gave up some momentum early in the third quarter and the start of the second half, but then kind of took control and were fighting for that victory, and then the final 4 minutes happened in the fourth quarter, which was absolutely bonkers. I missed the end. I saw most of the game, but missed the end, and I was following along via text from you and my dad and my Apple Watch score, and it was just crazy to wake up and see that the Dolphins had lost because, let's face it, there's 19 seconds left, and they're on their own 25, down 2. What's going to happen there with no timeouts? So, chalk it up. That's a loss for Miami, and basically Miami's playoff hope would be all but gone. I wake up overnight again and check the same things, text from you and my dad, and the ESPN app on my watch, and Miami won 26-25. And I was like, well, I need to go to sleep for a few more hours and wake up and watch those highlights because I have no idea what happened in the final few minutes that I was unable to watch. So I do that this morning first thing, and I just couldn't believe it. I had no idea that Fitzpatrick had even been put in when I walked away. Tua was still in. That must have happened right after I stopped watching, and he did it. Fitz magic. This crazy exchange of events over the last 4 minutes, a terrible pass interference call to set the Raiders up to take the lead near the end of the game, with essentially 20 seconds left, where they settle for a field goal after purposely not scoring from inside the 5 on 3 consecutive plays, which the Dolphins were also trying to let them score a touchdown, so they had more time to try to score a touchdown of their own. And us as Penn State fans know all too well what happens when you score too early. And apparently John Gruden was well aware of that and was attempting to not score and chew as much time off the clock as possible. However, it came to bite him because Fitzpatrick, despite getting his head ripped off, was able to complete a bomb down the left side to Eagles cast-off Mac Hollins. And then after they added the face mask penalty, the egregious
Mac
face
Hollins,
mask.
who dropped a close touchdown pass earlier in the game.
Yes, and one earlier as well. Completely redeemed themselves. Jason Sanders comes in, kicks the field goal, and with essentially no time left, Miami wins 26-25. They improved to 10-5. I believe it's only the fourth time in the last 18 years Miami's won double-digit games. One of those years they didn't make the playoffs either. And now they continue on the path of winning in, because now if they can go to Buffalo next week and beat the Bills, Miami clinches a playoff spot. And because of other things that happened today, they may not be the 7 seed. They could be as high as the 5 seed, the top seeded wild card team, because of what happened with Indianapolis and Cleveland. So, yeah, I mean, you saw it live, and I didn't get to see it live. So what were you thinking in those last few minutes of the Raiders-Dolphins game?
So when they made the move to Fitzpatrick, I'm like, man, this will be interesting. Like, if he does something here, not in some ways it'll be interesting, knowing it'll get talked about a bunch, but at the same time, also knowing that, like, they've been very clear that, like, Tua is the starter, and so on. And then you go and they didn't really. They moved the ball a little bit. He was really getting the ball downfield a little bit more, which was great. And that was just one of the things they talked about. And I think that he talked about too, was like, like taking the risks, but at the same time, like he's comfortable enough in, how he's playing. Like he doesn't mind just chucking it deep. So, they were able to move the ball a little bit. Now, the one like touchdown pass he threw it like 7 yards to, the running back. I can't think of his name.
Myles Gaskin.
Yeah, Myles Gaskins, who then runs across the middle, then like stops and runs back towards the sideline, gets the edge, and just runs, 54 yards for the touchdown. So, like, don't get me wrong, like it was a good pass, it was a good read and everything, but like, oh, okay, like it was, he did exactly. Like he threw like a slant, and the guy made, a 50-yard touchdown out of it. But when you look at some of the other like pieces of it, like, man, they go down and they tie it up. Then Nelson Aguilar scores on like an 80-yard touchdown. That was well defended. Like it wasn't like it was blown coverage. It was just a great throw by Carr, and then like next thing you know, like he breaks the tackle and runs the rest of the way for a touchdown. And then the Dolphins came back and tied it up. And then one of the things that drove me crazy was that how they were like talking over and over. They're like, about how David Carr drove him down for like the game winning field goal. Like, no, he didn't. Like they really did nothing outside of the big pass interference call. Like they ran it a few times, but like you said, they ran it trying to not score. But like their only like big play was the pass interference call, which was a horrible call. Now I will give it, like, I have no idea. That's much tougher in real time, all of that stuff, but there was very little contact. The defender was playing the ball, and it did not, as we learned this phrase last year when they were testing the review of pass interference, like it did not impede the receiver's like ability to make a play on the ball at all. And so like, you even had like a quarterback in Kurt Warner, I think, who was helping call the game. And he's like, even they like came around eventually and were like, yeah, they were basically like, I don't know how you make that call. Like, and to make that call, like knowing that it's going to decide the outcome of a game, like usually like guys swallow their whistles at the end, and nope, that was going to be a tough one to swallow. Like you said, it was interesting. We talked about how I understand wanting to run the clock down, and to be honest, like, even though it didn't work, it should. Like, it's not the offense's fault when you kick a field goal with 19 seconds left and to win and like you lose. Like, that's not on the offense. That's one of those things where like that now doesn't count as like a game winning drive for Derek Carr, which I just discredited a lot of that drive. But you know what I mean? Like, that doesn't count as a stat, even though he did exactly what he was supposed to do. You know,
right.
But you look at some of the things, it's just it's crazy because they went and like when they get the ball and it was in the post game with Fitzpatrick, it was interesting because he had told Hollins before, he's like, look, the ball's coming to you, because he knew exactly how they were going to play it, and they did. And they were talking about this post game. They're like, they don't know what the corner was doing. They said, yes, it's zone coverage, but there was no one else on that side. There was no shallow route on that side. There wasn't anywhere even close on that side. They said, you have to go deep with that guy. Like, they talked about how in the play, they were like, oh man, you know, in the safety couldn't get over in time. They said that was not the safety's guy. It was that cornerback, because there was no one else. They didn't run someone underneath. There was no one in the flat, nothing. He just stopped covering his guy for no reason. And they must have seen it on film, because they talked to Fitzpatrick and he was like, yeah, it's coming to you. Like, it's going to be there. But yeah, like he said, he got his head ripped off, but because they made the catch, he had that 15 yards on.
They're already in field goal range.
Right. And it was unreal.
It was essentially a 50-yard play, I believe, because I think it was a 34-yard catch and then a 15-yard penalty. So they went from their own 25 to what Las Vegas is like 27 or something like that.
Yeah. And it was interesting. Fitzpatrick said, he's like, don't get me wrong. He's like, getting my head ripped off might have helped. He's like, I couldn't see it. He's like, but it definitely helped me take something off the throw and probably like let it stay in bounds a little easier. But I think Adams just got another touchdown. So.
Oh boy.
Yep.
Oh boy. Well, you win some, you lose some. It's going to be a shootout for my dad and my uncle. So.
Yeah. But yeah, so it, like you said, it was interesting because while I don't know if the Dolphins would have won, like, I felt like they got cheated by the pass interference call. You know what I mean? Like, it was a tie game. So, like, I don't know, they could have lost it later on anyway, but like, it just felt like a tough way to lose it on like a 45-yard pass interference penalty.
Right.
Which I go back and forth. Like, I hate the idea that you can go 40 yards on a penalty like that.
I don't.
Yet at the same time, the way guys, like, the way NFL teams do it, man, they would just, if it was just a 15-yard penalty, you'd get tackled anytime you went further than 15 yards downfield. Like, you know, like.
Okay, yeah,
so
I see that point of view. Yeah, I
understand.
To me, it's too much of a wild card of, well, he also has to catch it. There's no guarantee that he was going to catch the ball, too, you know?
Yeah. But it was interesting. I mean, I was happy for the Dolphins. It was a crazy ending to the game. Like you said, it's football, so I'm entertained. But, like, the first three quarters, I'm like, ho-hum, you know, like.
Yeah, I mean, the moments that I got to watch, yeah.
Yes. And then, like, the last 4 minutes, it was just like, this is nuts.
Yeah, so Miami pulls it out. It's one of their closer games this year. Definitely the closest win they've had. We can't win by any less. So it was.
Well, and the Raiders have fallen off and were eliminated from the playoffs. And like, it's interesting. I started hearing it this week, like,
about
people
Gruden
replaying John Gruden from his press conference when he said, "If I can't get it done, I won't take the money." Well. 3 years, and the last 2 years they've collapsed.
Is this his third year? I was thinking this was only his second.
Yeah, this is his third year.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, there are obviously issues there. I feel like they're mostly defensive because I mean, Carr's looked pretty good with him at least this year. I don't think Carr is the problem, and they got Waller and they drafted Ruggs. Aguilar looks good out there. I know Hudson's one of the best offensive linemen, centers in the game. So I think they have the pieces there, and obviously Jacobs is great running back. So they maybe need some other help along the offensive line, but I think they need to improve the defense. That's where things need to shore up. You know, they just fired the defensive coordinator a few weeks ago.
Well, remember a couple of years ago, they were in a good spot to get like an impact defensive lineman, and they took the biggest of the stretches from Clemson off the defensive line instead of taking one of the more surefire guys.
How much they even how much they even play him. Was that Farrell? Was that Farrell? Cleveland Farrell?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I know it's rough. But I'm
Man.
happy. You know, I've never been a Raiders fan, so
No.
that
Yeah.
one feels good for a variety of reasons. But keeps Miami in the playoff hunt. Like I said, now with other things that have happened, they could move up to the 5 spot possibly, and play the 4 seed. And I'm guessing the 4 seed is going to be either Tennessee or Indianapolis, depending on who wins that division.
Right.
So
Tennessee getting smoked right now.
yeah, Tennessee is getting absolutely hammered by the Green Bay Packers, as we just talked about how we didn't think Green Bay was special. Tennessee showing that maybe they're not as special. It's just been a crazy parody-driven year this year. Because look at the. I mean, I don't want to jump too far ahead because I was going to talk about a few other games first, but just look what almost happened to the Chiefs today. You know, last week we were on here talking with Paul about how we'd take the Chiefs against all other 31 teams. You know, in terms of who could win the Super Bowl. Obviously, there's not that many teams that are going to even have the chance to win the Super Bowl or deserve to have the chance to win the Super Bowl. But that is just the point that the Chiefs were by and far the best team in the league. And then today they almost lose to the Falcons in Kansas City.
Yeah.
And maybe should have lost to the Falcons in Kansas City.
It was interesting. We're sitting there when it's tied, like maybe just a couple minutes into the fourth quarter. And my dad and I are just like, look, I know they are not playing well, but everything about both of these teams is telling me the Chiefs are going to win this game. Like, the Chiefs can just flip a switch and get it done, and the Falcons find ways to lose. And we saw both of those things down the stretch. Like, the Chiefs needed it, and they just drove right down the field and got a score. And then, you know, Atlanta gets in field goal range, 39-yard field goal for one of the best kickers this season, and he misses.
Right.
You know, like, again, the Chiefs flipped the switch and got it done, and the Falcons found a way to lose. So, you know, it's just, like I said before, like, by week 16, I feel like the teams have told us who they are, and it was the perfect example in that game today. And I think some of it is, I think the Chiefs, oh my gosh, man, they're just running straight through the Tennessee line and sacking Tannehill every play. Is this the Eagles out there? I can't tell. It's pretty snowy.
Which is crazy because the complaints about Green Bay every year about how terrible their defense is and how Aaron Rodgers is good for like 2 or 3 bad games each year, even though he's electric in the other, 13 or 14.
Right.
But we kind of saw it last year because they were awful in the playoffs.
Right.
Like, they were terrible. Yeah. Weren't they 13-3 last year too? And both you and I were they're not going to the conference championship.
Right. And they got smoked by San Francisco.
Yeah, they destroyed them. That was in the divisional round, right?
What's interesting though is like they're getting it done through the air tonight, even in this snow. Aaron Rodgers has 3 touchdown passes already, and like this very well may get Aaron Rodgers the MVP. Like, because while Mahomes they are winning, like, he's not putting up the gaudy numbers, and Rodgers is just being insane. But man, like Tennessee, the AFC South, like no one wants it. I guess like no one wants to take it. Like,
no, yeah, I wish those two teams played next week, and it wasn't that they were each playing the bottom dwellers in their division because Colts play the Colts play the Jaguars and the Titans play the Texans.
Now the good news is at least the Jaguars locked up the 1 seed or the number 1 pick, so like they don't have to worry about trying to lose next week. But
so I'm going to go back a couple games here because there's some that we don't have to talk about all that much. I was disappointed to see the Giants not put up a lot of fight with their playoff hopes dwindling. They needed to show something, and after they went on that little bit of run, last month, they haven't been able to do anything of late. They lost to the Ravens today in Baltimore 27-13. That was the only game that didn't really go in my favor in terms of something with the Dolphins. Ravens winning today was the only strike, and you know how much I despise those Ravens, those Baltimore Ravens. My dad's not a huge fan of your mom right now because her picks are on fire this week.
Yeah, they are on fire.
And
this
as
week.
I mentioned to you earlier, you and my dad are tied in multiple ways because of the
Yeah,
way you guys
yeah.
picked this week. Your mom looking pretty good to move to the top. So we'll see how that
Yeah.
happens. And she gets a victory from her Ravens, and they are in prime position to make the playoffs because as this started to come into focus last month, they had the easiest road to the playoffs because they played the crappiest teams to get there, and they're taking care of business though. Unlike some teams like Cleveland, who are also playing for their life. And I know there were some weird extenuating circumstances, but this is 2020, and every team has had some kind of weird circumstance thrown at them this year. Just talked to Denver a few weeks ago.
Right.
But Cleveland going to the Meadowlands, or what used to be the Meadowlands, today and losing to the Jets, winners of 2 in a row. Congratulations on ruining your potential to pick Trevor Lawrence. 23-16, the Jets beat the Browns. Cleveland, they're trying to break this drought. The drought that I mentioned earlier of Tampa Bay, the second longest playoff drought of 13 years. Well, Cleveland's is what, 17? 8, or about to maybe be 18? I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But they couldn't get it done today. And the thing is, they knew going into this game that they win, they're in. And also, if Pittsburgh lost to Indy, they could be playing for the division championship next week in Cleveland. But everything went wrong for them because Pittsburgh came back to beat Indianapolis, and then they couldn't beat the Jets. And I understand they were without their top 4 wideouts, but you got to be able to do something better than that. That just, I don't know.
Well, Baker Mayfield had 3 lost fumbles today, including one at the end
that
on
clinched
a
the
QB
loss.
sneak. Right. Like, it was insane. Like, and I get struggling, but they started the third quarter with 4 rushing yards. They have 2 Pro Bowl caliber running backs.
Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt in your backfield.
Right. Now, I think they were down 2 tackles today as well, which is insane. But, like,
the Jets didn't have Quinnen Williams. They
and
didn't have
the
their best
Jets.
defender. And they're the Jets. They had lost 13 games in a row until last week.
Right. So, like, I look at it, a couple notes here. One, the Browns are being the Browns. And it'll be interesting because I could see Pittsburgh trying to maybe build some momentum next week.
Well, right.
Now, here's an interesting thing. They clinched their division. They can't get the 1 seed. I'm really interested because they had that weird COVID situation with the bye early on. I'm really interested to see if they basically treat next week as a bye, and rest guys because they've been playing since August. Basically, their break was in mid-September or end of September, I guess, when Tennessee's COVID outbreak happened. But it'll be interesting because, man, if they play and they beat the Browns and keep the Browns out of the playoffs, like, I don't think it could be more heartbreaking for the Browns than to lose to the Jets, who are awful, and the Steelers, who don't need the win to close out your season and keep you from getting there even when you should have. Like,
yeah.
But it would be a very Cleveland thing to do.
It'll be very interesting to see what Pittsburgh does because I believe I don't think they can catch Buffalo for second, right? Because of the head-to-head.
Well, see, it's weird. I don't think so, but like the tiebreakers are so weird in a lot of those situations.
And also, it doesn't matter as much this year because the 2 seed doesn't get a bye. So, is the
right.
difference between 2 and 3?
It would only matter if they met in the AFC Championship game
with the Chiefs out.
Well, obviously, Kansas City had been knocked out.
Right. So, I don't know. Normal years, I feel like, just looking at this without knowing everything that's gone on recently, I feel like Pittsburgh would be apt to maybe play their guys a little bit and then take them out. But because Pittsburgh had looked so terrible over the last month, and they only started to get things going today, at the end of the third quarter, essentially.
Right.
Do they really want to not play a game entering the
Right.
playoffs? Even if you're going to be the 3 seed and play the 6 seed, whoever that ends up being, it could be the Colts
Right.
again. The Colts look very good for 2.5 quarters against them on the road, in Pittsburgh.
Right.
So if I'm Tomlin and that staff and those players, do you really want? I mean, I understand the injury risk is always there, and Ben is hobbled with probably a hyperextended knee a few weeks ago. He's also up there. He's been dealing with the upper body, arm injuries over the last year or so. So I understand the want to rest the guys, but you kind of started to get offensive cohesion at the end of this game.
Oh yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice to go out there and prove you can keep doing it?
They looked like the Steelers from the first. Right. They looked like the Steelers from earlier in the year, in the last quarter and a half of that game.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's a selfish part and bias from me that I want to see them beat the Browns, because knocking a team out of the potential to steal a spot for the Dolphins is high up on my list. So, as usual, I'm a huge Steelers fan. Again, I don't know. I don't know what to expect from them there. We'll see. We'll see what happens when it comes down to that. But Cleveland not able to overcome some off the field things today. And I have no ill will for Cleveland, because they're Cleveland, the Browns. But my team is trying to get into the playoffs, so if it takes them losing, I'm sorry. I want them to lose. Chicago, second half renaissance here, putting up 41 on the Jags. It's the first time in I think 60 years that the Bears have scored over 30 points in, was it 4 straight games? I think it was 3. Was it 3?
It was only 3.
Only 3? Okay. Just kind of a crazy – I saw a few crazy stats today, but that one I think takes the cake. The reemergence of Mitchell Trubisky, getting it done against the Jaguars, 41-17. Chicago, started off so strong and then lost, I think, was it 6 in a row? They were 5-1, dropped to 5-7. Now they've climbed up and are 8-7. And because of Arizona losing, they're in prime spot to make the playoffs. Now, they do have to host Green Bay in Week 17, and I don't know how much Green Bay will be playing for.
Because Seattle won, Green Bay cannot lock up the number 1 seed tonight.
So Green Bay will be playing for a lot of things. So
most likely, yeah. Because, especially with Seattle being out on the West, that'll probably be an afternoon game. Oh my gosh. I don't know how far back this is, but Green Bay is dominating the game. I'm just streaming it here. And Green Bay tries to kick a field goal, gets blocked. They're up 19-0. It gets blocked, and Tennessee runs it back really far into Green Bay territory. So everything's going the Packers' way, and then Tennessee gets a break and might get back in this thing. But anyway, yeah, there was a penalty against Tennessee at some point here. I don't know when, but.
Oh, yes. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Bears, but a lot of people in Chicago may have saved their jobs, including head coach Matt Nagy, general manager Ryan Pace, and possibly quarterback Mitchell Trubisky, which is crazy to think about. Just 6 weeks ago, everyone was all on the Foles bandwagon again, and then that took a turn. So a game that was very interesting to me for draft positioning was Cincinnati at Houston, and the Bengals were able to pull it out, winning for the second straight time now, beating the Texans 37-31 in Houston. This is important to me because it essentially locks up a top 5 pick for Miami, who could possibly finish the season 11-5 and the 5 seed in the AFC, will also hold a top 5 pick courtesy of the Laramie Tunsil trade with Houston last year. So, like I said, there were 4 or 5 things that I wanted or needed to happen for my Dolphins to make the playoffs. 1 win, they did that. Have 3 teams lose, which were the Browns, check mark, the Colts, check mark, the Ravens, no, missed on that one. But now the Titans are also losing, So that knocks another team down to 10-5. One of them, obviously, Titans or Colts have to win the AFC South, but I don't know. When it comes down to tiebreakers, it's hard for me to figure out how things are going because I don't know that head-to-head is a tiebreaker for playoff
I don't think it is
positioning.
because
I
not
think it's
everyone
conference.
plays head-to-head.
So I think it's conference record or common
I think it
opponents.
is.
It's weird. So,
Yeah.
but I just
Because which is where it's weird to me, even between Steelers and Bills, because they did play head-to-head this year, but I'm not sure that it matters because not all the teams play each other. Like, it's just so weird. Outside of the divisional tiebreakers, it gets really weird.
So we mentioned it a few times, but the Steelers came back to beat the Colts today. It's their biggest comeback victory in the Mike Tomlin era, and as the announcer said, they haven't needed a lot of comeback victories in the Mike Tomlin era, but this is the biggest one. They were able to overcome the deficit today. They beat the Colts 28-24. It was an exciting game there at the end, and Pittsburgh was able to get it done. And like Justin and I have been saying, what do they do in Week 17? Do they try to keep this mojo and this momentum? We will find out.
So, like, another interesting thing here. Now, don't get me wrong. The Colts did plenty to lose the game. And I do have anti-Steelers, like full-on anti-Steelers bias. And I did pick against them today. However, like a play or two before their go-ahead touchdown, it's very likely that it was a pick six. And Chase Claypool just hits the guy because he realized he ran the wrong route and he sees the guy breaking and hits him and keeps him from being able to intercept the ball on a dead run going the other way. And not only is it not like a pick six, but they don't even call it. Like, they don't throw a flag at all. And it was just one of those things where it's like, oh my gosh, like, you know, a play or two later, they score the go ahead touchdown. You know, it was interesting. There were a number of questionable calls in some games. And I feel like honestly, like 3 weeks ago, I was thinking, man, like, I really feel like it's incredible that, like, there haven't been a ton of games where I'm like, oh man, these calls are really like affecting like outcomes of games, like late in games and things like that. And then like the last few weeks, there's been calls where I'm just like, I have no idea like how they, you know, let that call stand or how they do this or how they do that. Like in the Browns game today, they're down 13-3 and they hit the Jets quarterback and the ball comes out and it looked like it was out. Like, it looked pretty clear to me. Now they whistled it incomplete, but the Browns clearly recovered. So like, it should have been Browns ball, even though they ran it back for a touchdown. Like, so in my opinion, if it was correctly called, it would have been a Browns touchdown. Next thing you know, it's 13-10. Now, Cody Parkey proved today you can't assume he'll make the extra point, but like 13-10 or 13-9. But at the same time, not only did they say, oh, you know, well, yeah, we whistled it dead, so it's Browns ball. They were like, no, call stands. And I'm like, what? Like, but yet in another game, you know, like you see it and they're like, it looks like it was an incomplete pass. And like, nope, the ball was out. Like, I don't know. And here's the thing with that. It's New York is making that call. It's not just the guy under the hood. So like, I don't understand how the same people looking at the same plays can be so inconsistent on some of those things. Like, that bothers me. And those are games where, like, yes, I picked one team to win or like stuff like that, but not even the Eagles here. Like, it's not like, you know, in the Browns Jets game, I really don't have a lot you know, at stake there. And I'm just like, I don't know how you like stay with that call. Like, that clearly just seems wrong, you know, like, and that just frustrates me. Now, again, the Browns played terrible. So like, they didn't deserve to win the game. And I don't know that changes the outcome, but there's a big difference between, you know, 13-3 and 13-10, you know? So I don't know. It's just weird. It's one of those things that has bothered me. And honestly, it stuck out to me the last couple of weeks. There's been a few games. Well, like, and we talked about the Dolphins game where that was a horrific call.
Right.
But you know, it is what it is. Yeah, but yeah, whatever.
So we've hit the hour mark, so we want to wrap up here. But One of the bigger upsets today that set down a crazy Week 17 showdowns was the Carolina Panthers going to Washington and
Yeah.
defeating football team today, 20-13. The Washington football team benched Dwayne Haskins, couldn't go with Alex Smith or Allen, Kyle Allen, because they're both on injured or an injured reserve. Taylor Heineke actually was brought in to replace Haskins, and he showed some willingness to push the ball downfield. They got a touchdown, couldn't recover the onside kick to make it a close game there at the end. But yeah, Washington losing just opens up crazy NFC East scenarios. Next week, the Cowboys and Giants play, and the Eagles and Washington play. If Washington wins, I believe they're in.
Yeah, if they win, they get the playoffs, and it was the same thing for today. Like if they won, they clinched.
However, should the Eagles beat Washington, the winner of Dallas and New York win the division and are the 4th seed in the NFC.
Right. If the Eagles win next week, it means you're going to have a 6-10 team host a playoff game.
If the Eagles win, well, no, isn't Dallas is 6-9 right now?
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
If
if the Giants, if the Eagles and Giants win next week, sorry.
Yeah.
So if the Eagles and Giants win,
yes, the Giants would win the division and host a playoff game at 6-10. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the NFC East. And before we sign off, obviously we should probably talk about Philadelphia and Dallas playing down in Dallas today. Eagles jumped out to an early lead, 14-3, and things look pretty good. Fletcher Cox got injured, and I don't know if it's just a coincidental, but after his injury, the Eagles couldn't do anything on offense or defense. Dallas unleashed on them to get the win today, 37-17.
Right. They jumped up 14-3 and then got outscored 34-3 the rest of the way. And yeah, it was one of those things. And it's tough right now because like I want and Jalen Hurts has definitely brought an aspect to the offense with his ability to run. But he can't hide the inconsistencies and the shortcomings of Doug Peterson. For example, okay, Eagles are up 14-3. Miles Sanders had 15 carries for the game. 15 carries in the entire game for Miles Sanders. He had 9 by the first couple minutes of the second quarter. When the Eagles had been playing their best, he had 9 carries at that point. He only got 6 more carries the entire rest of the game. How does that happen? Like, I don't understand how that happens. What in Doug's mind makes him think, hey, this is working, we should go away from this? That's really, really frustrating. Like you said, Fletcher Cox being out is obviously going to create a difference. But, like, man, it's not a 34-3 difference. Like, what the heck happened? Jalen Hurts had 3 turnovers today, 2 interceptions, 1 in the end zone, and 1 late in the game. But, like, it wasn't anywhere close to an Eagles guy. I don't know where he was throwing it. Had another fumble today. He had a couple fumbles, but only one of them was lost. Got sacked 3 more times. He was sacked 6 times last week. Got sacked 3 times this week. And here's the thing: Dallas's defense is awful. Like, Dallas's defense is awful. Eagles scored 14 quick points, and then nothing the rest of the time. That was bad. That was really bad. And with Washington losing, like, if the Eagles win that, then it would have been winner take all against Washington next week. And yeah, it's just it was a pathetic showing. I think it goes to show not the issue with Jalen Hurts as much as the issue is with the team in general. They're just not very good. I said it earlier in the show. By week 16, teams have shown us who they are, and the Eagles have shown us they're a terrible football team. And it doesn't matter who the quarterback is; they're a terrible football team. They don't have offense. Their only real offensive weapon is Miles Sanders, and the coach refuses to give him the ball. Jalen Hurts can provide sparks at times, but you're only going to be able to run the zone read so many times Like he's a power runner more than a runner like Lamar Jackson, who's going to just like outrun guys, which is great at times when you need him to run somebody over. That's awesome. But I don't necessarily want my quarterback out there regularly running people over. I'd rather him outrun people and then get down, especially when he's fumbled a couple times now because of that. It's just, again, it's not Jalen Hurts' problem. Like, the team is just no good. I'm convinced they'll win next week just to kind of hurt their draft stock a little bit, but I'm not at all convinced they're going to do anything right with the draft pick anyway. I said it to you, and the Pro Bowl things, I don't know if they were announced. I think they were announced last Sunday or last weekend.
They were.
But, yeah, so Brandon Graham made it for the Eagles, but he was drafted 10 years ago. So the stat still stands. The stat still stands. Since 2014, the Eagles have drafted one player with a Pro Bowl appearance, and that's Carson Wentz. It's just unreal how just inept they are as an organization right now. And I don't know. It'll be interesting. I think if they lose next week, I wouldn't say it's out of the question to see Doug gone. I fully expect him and Howie to both be back next year, though, and
right.
just kind of do
my
more of the
question
same.
is, who do they go get? Like, who are you replacing him with?
So I did have someone, and don't get me wrong, I don't think that this happens. Like, just to be clear, but someone brought up to me, they're like, "Do you think?" Well, and see, again, this is not my theory. Someone brought this up to me. They asked me if they thought that because of the Andy Reid and Laurie connection, do you think they could maybe get an in with Bieniemy? And it would, to be clear, it was an aspect of it I had not considered before. Like, I don't even, he's going to be able to name his job, in my opinion, Eric Bieniemy. Like, will probably be able to pick whatever job he wants.
Right. And I would think Houston or the Chargers would be more appealing.
I would agree with both of those situations, or both those takes. I hadn't thought of the fact of, like, but it also is one of those things where it worked for Doug, but like the Eagles have to fire an Andy Reid guy to be able to go get another Andy Reid guy. Like, I feel like
maybe they can trade Doug Peterson to Kansas City.
Howie Roseman trades the number 7 overall pick for Eric Bieniemy, so we can have good quarterbacks, but no help for the quarterbacks.
They'll
draft Justin Fields at number 7. We want to be a quarterback factory, right?
Right, so, exactly.
Being a quarterback factory is great if you're a college. Like, that's what a college should do, not a pro team. You want a guy who's there for 15 years.
So,
my gosh,
the Chargers
total ineptitude.
The Chargers beat the Broncos today, 19-16 on a last-minute field goal. Anthony Lynn almost outdid himself. The team was up big. Denver fought back, but the Chargers ended up getting that victory. And the Seahawks today put away the Rams 20-9. Seattle in the driver's seat there in the NFC West, and still looking for a chance to earn a higher seed in the NFC. Tennessee has gotten on the board against Green Bay. It's now 19-7, nearing halftime. So unless Green Bay goes into cruise mode, and
however, this is playing out. I don't know how it will play out here, but they were up big and early on Carolina last week and had to hang on to win. So we've seen this, and we've seen Tennessee actually be able to put points up in a hurry and come back like they did against Cleveland a few weeks ago.
Yep.
So
Buffalo, New England is tomorrow night. That's the last game of Week 16. A couple texts before we leave. My uncle says he agrees with you, Justin. Steelers get most of the calls in their favor. He also just now texted question.
Just to be clear, I believe your uncle's team got a big call in their favor there a few years ago when they said Jesse James did not make the catch at the goal line, which, to be clear, full disclosure, that worked out in the Eagles' favor, in my opinion, because they got to beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl that year. But
yes, I remember that call. I remember saying how wrong they were. That was clearly a touchdown by the Outlaw. He also just texts here, Wentz to the Patriots, question mark?
Well, that would ensure a couple things. One, the Patriots would make the playoffs again next year, and Carson Wentz would go on to be like, I'm convinced this is going to be one of those Chris Carter situations where I know it's not the same thing. Like Carson Wentz isn't addicted to drugs, and like Chris Carter has openly talked about how getting traded from Philly saved his life because he had to turn his life around at that point. But like, Eagles trade away a Hall of Fame wide receiver. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to trade away Carson Wentz, and he's going to go somewhere and be great. And I'm not even like mad. Like I like Carson Wentz and I want him to do well. It's just like, what the heck? Like I've said this over and over and I'll keep saying it. Like what convinces anybody? I want to know why anyone is convinced that the franchise will do right by Jalen Hurts. Like they already have proven that they had an MVP caliber like quarterback that they drafted and they broke him. What makes you think that one, they've shown they can't draft and develop talent. So what makes you think that one, they did it again with Jalen Hurts, and two, that they'll be able to do anything better with him than they did with Carson Wentz? Like, that's not a statement about Hurts as much as it is my lack of faith in that organization.
So we sort of touched on this, but the last question, this one's from my dad. He wants to know, do you, Justin, think the Eagles coach should go? Do you think Doug Peterson should be fired at the end of this season?
So if I'm making the call, it's tough because the fan in me says yes, but everything that you and I talk about all the time and about stability, I think there needs to be major shakeups, and I think that may mean
coordinator changes
or changing play calling duties, which I know like that's not the way to do it. That's what went wrong in Dallas when they tell Jason Garrett, you're coaching for your job, but by the way, you're not allowed to call the plays anymore. Like if you're going to take play calling, if you don't have enough faith in your coach to call the plays or for him to make the decision about calling plays, then you've already shown that you don't have confidence in the coach. So you know what? I'll say, yeah, I think it's time to move on, and I'll gladly eat my words if he turns it around next year. But like, I feel like they bring so many problems on themselves by decisions, not necessarily actions. And those decisions get made. You're the one that's responsible when you're the coach, man. So, yeah, I think it's time to move in a different direction. But right. like you brought up a great point earlier. I have no idea who. Like I don't know that actually improves them. But I think the status quo is unacceptable right now.
So when the Fire Peterson billboard goes up, you know that Justin, if he didn't create it, he contributed to it in some form. So, well, we're running way late, so it's time for us to go. But Justin, thanks for joining via the hotline tonight. And
yeah, quick shout out to a buddy of mine from Columbia, Tom Fleckenstein. Friend since third grade when I moved to Columbia, was watching the show last week and commented a few times, and today is his birthday, so happy birthday.
Oh, happy birthday. Yes, I've seen him on our streams in the past, yep. So appreciate anyone that reaches out to us, comments on the videos, and watches or listens to us after the fact on the variety of podcatchers out there or video networks. And like I said, find us on Twitch, Joe Mays and J-Raff, and we will be broadcasting our shows there. And in a few months, we will be playing the college football video game while we do the show, and we'll go from there. But we have a lot in store over the next few weeks. Obviously, this is the end of 2020, so happy early New Year to everyone. We will see everyone in 2021 early. We will be here on Sunday, January 3rd, 1 week from now. Obviously, recapping Week 17 and talking about the playoffs. And then we'll be back every week in January to talk about the wild card round, the divisional round, the conference championship round. And then we are planning on inviting Paul Roberts back on to do the conference championship recap with the Super Bowl preview. That'll be coming up in back-to-back weeks. So we got the 3rd is Week 17, the 10th is wild card, 17th divisional round, 24th is conference championship. January 31st will be our Super Bowl preview, And then we will be off 2 weeks in a row in February because of the Super Bowl and then Valentine's Day. And then that next show on February 21st is our 10-year anniversary show. So, yeah, crazy to think we've been doing this for a decade. But, yeah, that's where we're at. So we appreciate everyone that's tuned in during 2020. And we got plenty more coming on the horizon. And do want to just belated Merry Christmas to everyone. Hopefully everyone had a safe but fun and joyful holiday. And hopefully the same can be said a few days from now to kick off the new year or to say bye-bye to this one. Anything else from you, Justin?
I got nothing.
You got nothing.
Hope everybody had a great holiday and was safe.
Yeah. And a belated birthday to my cousin Christine, who gets to celebrate on Christmas Day.
It can't be a show in December without May's birthday shout.
That's right. Everyone always told me that me and my dad got the shaft by having our birthdays a week before, but Christine celebrating on Christmas, a double dose, birthday, Christmas, all in one. So belated birthday to my cousin, one of the New Englanders. So, yeah. But I think that's it. So thanks for joining us again for episode 321 as we get ready to roll into the new year. And like I said, that was not done on purpose, but I do like the way that worked out. So for Justin and me and anyone else that contributes or works on the Jam and JR radio team, including Tangents with Friends, which will be live this week with Brian and Brett Berenshausen. So tune in on Tuesday as we talk about Star Wars and the other thing happening. Oh, The Mandalorian, that awesome conclusion that just happened for season 2. So if you're interested in pop culture, check us out on Tuesday. So that's it. We'll be back again in the new year, a week from now. Until next time, for Justin Raffoff, I'm Joe Mays. Thanks for listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop. Woo-hoo! You can watch each weekly episode live on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. You can also rate and review us on many of these platforms as well. We'd love to hear from you. Send your emails to the Mays Sandwich Shop inbox at joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is a part of the JMNJR Radio Network, home to other productions such as The Bulldog Hour, Tangents with Friends, and Nat Chats with Dad. Until next time.